In April of 2022, the School of Medical and Life Sciences postgraduate community organized an event where Yong Shin Jie was invited to give a presentation. He's a master's student at Sunway University who already has 6 scientific articles to his name that have been published in 6 different high-impact journals. He's here to show the ins and outs of publishing literature reviews as a student and take you through his own process of writing.
Okay, hi everyone. I'm very honored to be here and I thank you all for attending, be it online or offline. So I'll start to share my screen. Okay, so I'll be talking about approaches to writing and publishing literature reviews. So I'll give an outline. First, I'll be talking about how to identify open or nuance means novel, how to identify open or novel research topics to write about. Second, I'll be talking about writing tips I personally use. Third one will be about figure creation tips. I will give 3 PowerPoint examples where uploaded on a OneDrive folder. Yeah, I will share this link later so you can maybe reverse engineer the PowerPoint files yourself. Fourth will be how to search for suitable journals with a good impact factor and most importantly, free to publish in. Fifth will be about how to contact the journal editor and pass the peer review examples. I'll also give examples of a cover letter to the editor later. Yeah, so I would like to share this video for a minute. I know Dr. Jordan Peterson is very controversial, so this is not to promote him or anything. I just want to share what he has to say about writing.
Of the grading side, but the best thing you can do is teach people to write, because there's no difference between that and thinking. And one of the things that just blows me away about universities is that no one ever tells students why they should write something. It's like, well, you have to do this assignment. Well, why are you writing? Well, you need the grade. It's like, no, you need to learn to think, because thinking makes you act effectively in the world. Thinking makes you win the battles you undertake, and those could be battles for good things. If you can think and speak and write, you are absolutely deadly. Nothing can get in your way. So that's why you learn to write. It's like, and I can't believe that people aren't just told that. It's like, it's the most powerful weapon you can possibly provide someone with.
Yeah, so Dr. Peterson said that the best thing you can do is to teach people to write, because there's no difference between that and thinking. So in other words, writing is essentially formalized thinking. By putting your thoughts into words, you can actually bring ideas into reality, which if you think about it is one of the most basic forms of communication. So why you should listen to me about writing? I've published 6 literature reviews to date as the first author, some in a decent journal and some has been cited a decent amount. Some for academic writing. I'm also an active science blogger where I've written almost more than 200 articles for the general audience and has garnered a decent amount of following. Okay, so yeah, I know I'm flexing, so let's begin for real. First one is how to identify open or nuanced research topics to write about. So you have to read this much. No, I'm just joking. There's an easy way. You don't have to read this much. The easy way is to just read the latest ones, the latest reviews, the latest original papers. Original papers means papers with experimental data. Read the latest one to get an idea of what has been published in the field. And you want to ask yourself what's the problem in this research field, and most importantly, how this problem can be addressed. I will show examples later. But this problem is essentially the research gap in the field. If you discuss more about what is missing in the field, it's more novel, and more novelty tends to lead to higher acceptance rate. I mean, if you put yourself in the editor's shoes, you wouldn't want a literature review that is very common. You want something that is more unique and new to the field. But if you have a common one, there's nothing wrong with that. You can still play around with it. You can use a different structure. You can have better diagrams. You can go more in depth or update the review. Let's say the latest review on a topic is back in 2018. You can still update it in 2022 or 2023, where you can put more focus on a particular area. I did this once. You emphasize more on a particular area that is not discussed too often, and that still works. I will show an example later. Yeah. So in my first review, I wrote about the gut microbiota and depression. So I summarized the mechanisms of how probiotics can help treat depression, but I also mentioned how does understanding the mechanism alone is not enough because of the multifaceted nature of both the gut microbiota and the depression. And I also provide possible suggestions on how to circumvent this problem in the review. So yeah, I identify a problem and provide ways on how this problem can be addressed. Here is, it is very well known that this virus, herpes simplex virus type 1, can infect the brain, but which brain area is almost never discussed. So this is what I mean by emphasis on a particular area. That's why I mentioned here, there's the neuroanatomical standpoint of the tropism of this virus in the brain is not emphasized in detail. So this is what my review was about. It's more different than the others, or else if it's too common, it's very hard to get it published. But this is one example of common review. I wrote this back then when long COVID or the post-COVID syndrome wasn't very common. So I just give an overview of what has been known about its pathophysiology, its risk factors, and treatments, because not much review discussed this back then. But now it's very hard to get reviews like this published because there are too many of them. And so the next one, I wrote about the subtypes of long COVID. In the subtype, because a lot of reviews mention how complex long COVID is or how diverse it is, not many try to address it. So I addressed it by proposing 6 different subtypes of long COVID and managed to publish it in a good journal. Yeah, so the important thing is to try to identify a problem in the field and try to provide solutions to it. Yeah, so how do I do that? I usually go to PubMed. PubMed is a biomedical database. I go to PubMed and search the keyword of what I want to look for. So if I want to look for long COVID, I key in long COVID, the PubMed operator TIAB. TIAB is title/abstract. Review PT. PT is publication type. And there is 205 results. But if I just add one single keyword, subtype keyword, I reduce it to 1 result, which was my paper. But if you want to be more careful, another keyword can add a phenotype. They are not the same, subtype and phenotype, but they are similar. There are 7 results. And almost all of them, all of them, they are not really about subtype or phenotype. They just have the keyword in the paper. So by just simply narrow down your scope, you can narrow down from 200 papers to read to just 7 papers to read. So the key is to narrow down your scope and try to avoid very broad topics. You can still write very broad topics, but narrow down it within that broad topics, if you get what I mean. Okay, second example is lactoferrin, and this is what I'm working on right now. I want to know what has been done on lactoferrin, which is an antimicrobial peptide. I want to know what has been done on lactoferrin and Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. And just by searching this alone, I have 102 results. If I key in review, I have 21. But if I want to talk about the mechanisms or mechanism of action, I have 8. But even though none of them is directly related to lactoferrin, because lactoferrin is known as a drug carrier into the brain. That's why this was about. It is about curcumin. This one is about nanotherapeutics. So if you can narrow down from 21 reviews to 8 reviews and see whether your idea has been published or not. But I know from this 8, a review about, let's say, the neuroprotective mechanisms of lactoferrin in Alzheimer's and Parkinson's will be valuable because it is not common. And it's not common. And here are some useful PubMed operators. N is both X and Y. You can use OR. Not is very useful because they don't have a PubMed operator for filtering out original research only. So if you use not, you can filter out, for example, you can write lactoferrin, not review, and then use the PubMed operator of PT is publication type. So you can filter out all the reviews and just get the non-review articles. So not can be useful. TIAB is title abstract. TI is title only. All is all fields. This is not important because if you don't put any PubMed operator, it's all fields by default. PT is publication type. You can put review, you can put clinical study, you can put observational study. There's different publication type, you can look them up. PD is publication date. TA is journal, which is quite useful, even a hunt for journals to submit to. I will show how I use TA later. LA is language, AU is author. Not that useful, but still good to know. Yeah, you can see what their function is in this help pubmed.ncbi/help. There's also a MASH terms. You can use this. You can just, let's say you want to put cell culture, there's a list of options you can choose. I think lactoferrin is a MASH terms, COVID maybe, but I don't really use this that much because I think it relies on human creators to curate the journal article into specific MASH terms. And generally, I think machines are more reliable, so I don't use this often. Yeah, so part 2 about writing tips and resources. Yeah, so just to be realistic, this is what a writer is about. If you want to be a writer, your friends think you're just relaxing most of the time. Your mom still sees you as a baby. Your society thinks you have a cool job. Your editor or your supervisor thinks you're just sleeping all the time because your progress is so slow. And you think you're a badass, but this is what you look like. This is what I look like. So keep your expectations realistic. You look like this most of the time. So that's the basics. Let's start with the basics first. You avoid long, complicated, or redundant sentences. I think this is very common. You try to make your text simple to understand. You should prioritize structure and information flow over the quantity of information or vocabulary. So you don't need fancy words. You don't need to include a study every time you see it. Try to prioritize the structure and flow. Editing is key because the more you edit, the better it usually gets, but be careful not to over edit. But knowing the difference takes practice. So yeah, try to edit your work maybe 3 to 5 times. It's not a lot. You think it's a lot, but it's not. 3 to 5 times is a normal for me. Sometimes even up to 10 times. Use Grammarly or other citation tools. I use EndNote. But Grammarly, even though it's free, it can still save your time, help you catch those basic errors you might miss. And citation tool is almost a must, or else humans will make mistakes. I trust machines more, so use citation tool. And yeah, read quality papers. Papers published in these kind of journals that have brilliant English, they have brilliant writing. So read some of them. I will show some of the papers I've read, but read their quality papers, try to reverse engineer their writing and copy a bit maybe, but don't plagiarize, just copy the style if you want to mix and match to make it your own writing style. But read more good work, read more good writing, and you'll improve your writing. Controversial, but if your institution don't have access to the paper, use Sci-Hub or LibGen. If your institution plans Sci-Hub, I think LibGen still works. Practice is key. Like any musical instrument or like any sports, no amount of teaching can help. You have to practice. So read and write often. Yeah, here's all the papers. This one is published in Nature Reviews Neuroscience. I mean, here are some of the papers I read carefully, and I even copy their writing style a bit. Here is Nature Review Neuroscience. Here is Trends in Microbiology. This is in BMJ, British Medical Journal. And this one is on bioscience. It's less impact factor, around 6, but this Christopher guy, he can really write. If you want to look for more fancy English, read this paper. But these 3, if you look for basic English but still understandable, you can read these 3. But this Christopher guy, his English is very creative. Yeah, so moving on to the little things about writing, just some of the basic. Here are the little things you can do to improve your writing. You read the introduction or discussion section to get ideas. If you run out of ideas, you don't know what to write about next, you can read about their discussion or introduction. Yeah, if you read the introduction or discussion section of the papers, you can get citations from there. They usually cite the important citations already if it's a good paper in a good impact factor journal. So they already did all the hard work. You might as well just hop in and take a few citations out. And cite the original source if you can. It's not that difficult to backtrack 3 or 5 times. but try to cite the original source for an important point. If it's not very important, you can start a review, but sometimes the peer reviewers might be picky and don't want you to cite too many reviews. So cite the original source if you can. And this is what I just do. I save the PDF as first author, year and title. Doing so kind of helps me to remember which paper is about what. Yeah, because if you interact with something, you can sort of remember better. So this is just what I do. Use subheadings up to 3 levels to organize your thoughts, to organize your text. For example, you can use 2.1. I mean, you can use 2 first, and then 2.1, and then 2.1.1, 2.1.2, and so on. But just 3 levels. More than that is a bit redundant, so just stick to 3 levels. If you find your text is getting very repetitive, you're just repeating the same pattern or same writing style, you can use a table. And in the text, you can just cite table 1 or cite table 2. This is not easy, but I can use a figure to illustrate the overall picture. Because usually when people read, they only look at images, they don't really read the text. So if you have a figure, your paper will be better. Of course, I will show how I create my figures later. And get another co-author to read it, because that's what I do at first, because what seems clear to you might not seem clear to others, and you miss a lot of things on your own, because they say 2 brains is better than 1. So I'll try to get another perspective. Yeah, so let's move on to part 3, figure creation. Yeah, you should use Miranda, Illustrator, and Photoshop. These things are those complex tools, but you actually don't need them. I think PowerPoint is enough, and I'll show you, I'll prove it to you. PowerPoint is enough. Yeah, in PowerPoint, you can use a lot of different things. You can use the gradient, you can use the eyedropper, a lot of things. Yeah, I will open a separate file. I'll show you. Share screen. Yeah, I hope you can see this. Okay, I will share this file later. This is where I create all my figures. For example, this box is just, if I zoom in, it is just made of different, if I group them, just made of different little boxes and words. Just have to have the idea in your head. These kind of things are simple to create. These things are more complicated. If I zoom up again, if I can group all of them, if I group and ungroup. Yeah, they are made of different little things. They are made of different things. You can combine them slowly. This brain thing, they are all icons. You can just Google like brain icon or something. Then you can just try to take it and modify it. You can change colors. You can still change this if they are from icon. And sometimes you can just crop things out, be more creative. For example, this is just, yeah, this is I crop this one out from this thing. So just crop it out. Yeah, I think this is mostly icons and shapes. This is simple a bit. The next one is, yeah, gradient is very useful. Gradient makes everything looks nicer. So we go there. Yeah, if we go to shape fill and choose gradient, more gradients. You can have a lot. I usually choose radial and then in the center, because the center you looks the best. If we choose the side, doesn't look the best. Doesn't look like good. So center is the best. You can use different colors to denote different things. And gradient is, yeah, just makes everything looks nicer. This thing is, if you cannot find a specific kind of shapes you want, you can still move around, play around. This thing is just free from shape. If I take this thing out and try to recreate it, insert shapes, and then, oh, I don't know where it is. Yeah, free from shape. Just draw the shape. There's a borderline. Try to avoid too many points. If you just draw an overline first, an overall shape. You can edit shape, edit points, and just slowly move around to make it something like this. And then you can fill. You can use color fill. You can use eyedropper. If I use shape fill, I just take eyedropper and take this color. And you can maybe make it a gradient fill. Yeah, try to make it This is path. I use radial and try to do center. You look something similar to this. Yeah, so it's possible to create a own shapes using the freeform. It just takes time and creativity. Next one is all about gradient also. Yeah, it's all about gradient. Just a bunch of gradient boxes. The different grade, different colors denote different things. Same thing over here, just about gradient. This one is just an image. I take the image from somewhere and I just copy paste the image. I then remove background. I think if you remove background, it makes the image transparent. If I group, ungroup. Yeah, you make the image, you can remove background. And if you don't remove background, it'll be white and it's hard to like design with white background. So make it a transparent background. There's a background removal function in PowerPoint. And this thing is just made of two different things where I change the color. These things are also images, I think, where I just copy from somewhere, I change the color. The original color is not like this. The original color is something else, but I can change everything to blue and make it your own. Remove the background. I mean, you can just take images here and there, remove their background and change the color. Mix and match to create a figure as long as you have an idea. And this one was from my dark microbiota paper. You can still recycle images. Oh, the virus is an icon. Just copy from Google. I think I didn't change the color, but I can still change the color. This one also made of different icons and gradients. Yeah, above this thing is a gradient. This human vector, I took it from freepik.com. Freepik.com is the copyright free. I think you can take their images if they have. But I still cite it in my figure caption. I just say this image is derived from Freepik. Oh, this is just systematic review thing. If you group and ungroup, ungroup them. Yeah, they're just a bunch of boxes. Or you can use align tool. Align tool is very useful. You can select multiple things and just search align. They will align object. They can align center. Or this center with this, but you can just select multiple things and align them. So you save your time. And this is my latest one. This is again just a bunch of shapes and figures. This thing is just made of different, I don't know, cones, different cones. Yeah, it's made of different cones. This receptor is just made of different shapes. I just group and group, just a different shape thing. Yeah, we should take it out. This is an image I think I took from somewhere and remove the background again. And this is just different. I think I used gradient for this one. Yeah, just two layers of things. This thing is a nucleus that's made of a gradient, but yeah, the radial gradient. This thing is also a gradient. Just mix them. Yeah, mix two oval shape. Get a DNA icon from Google. Put it there, and you can create a nucleus. This thing is also an image I took from a publication where I remove the background. Yeah, remove background. If I just discard all changes, it's gray. But it won't look nice if it's gray. That's why you need to remove the background. Just do it slowly. Remove background. What areas to keep first? I'm gonna keep this one. Let's do the outside one. You can zoom in for like better. Just zoom in as much as you can. And just like do slowly. It needs patience. Yeah, just like do slowly. If you don't want this, you just remove it. Yeah, do it very, very slow. I think it took me a few hours, but if you find a better image, you can save your time. Yeah, by creating this looks easy, but it's not easy. This thing takes me a few days. But I mean, I work on it like 3 to 4 hours a day. It will take me a few days. Same thing in my second one. The nucleus is the same. Our structure is the same. The mitochondria is an icon, I think. Yeah, I think that's about it. The very important tools are gradient to look nice. Try to practice the background removal of images. Try to know how to find icons and try to be creative. Yeah, I will share this file. You guys can reverse engineer slowly, and yeah, but just don't plagiarize. Yeah, PowerPoint is enough. So these are the main tools you can use in PowerPoint. I think they are enough to create good quality figures. Yeah, you can mix and match different. If you don't have ideas, you can mix and match figures from different papers to get an idea. Oh yeah, so if you want to get 300 dpi, PowerPoint is not enough. Sorry about that. I think they have in Google how to do it, but I cannot manage to make it successful. So I use Illustrator. I export PowerPoint as PDF, open PDF with Illustrator, and export it as 300 dpi. It's very simple. Just a few steps. Just yeah, it's very intuitive. Also, if you have Illustrator. I think the library has it. You can go and check. But Illustrator is easy to crack also. Other tools you can use is Inkscape, Biorator, MindTheGraph, or Illustrator. Biorator and MindTheGraph need to pay to use. Inkscape, Illustrator, they are very difficult to learn. I don't use them. PowerPoint is enough for me. And yeah, sleep on it because creativity requires sleep. That's why I take 3 to 4 days because every day I get a new idea and I just work on it. And again, edit your figures as around 5 times or 10 times. That's the bare minimum. Oh, I already showed the examples. Yeah, I think that's about figure. So let's move on to how to find good journals. So don't be like this. Pick the proper journals, so don't get to avoid desk rejection or manuscript rejection. So avoid rejection starts with how to find journals. I use SciMago. Go to SciMagoJR.com, click journal ranks, and yeah, input. Yeah, this is what it looks like. The number are ranking. SciMago ranks the journal by ranking. So the lower the ranking, the easier to get into. But I stick with Q1 because there's 4 Q1 to Q4, and Q1 tends to have a good impact factor. So if you choose a low ranking Q1, you have the impact factor and it'll be easier to get into. As I go to like 50 something for neuroscience, if you see the log sign is pretty open access, you have to pay. If you don't have the fund, avoid this. If there's no log sign, it's hybrid. As far as I know, hybrid means you have the option to choose between closed or open access. Closed access means it's free to publish in, no article processing fees. And yeah, this is the main subject, but sometimes your field might not be in the main. You have to use a second one. For example, epidemiology is not here. You look for here. And it's the same thing. Try to pick a lower ranking Q1 journal, or maybe Q2. Q2 is still good, I think. But I try to stay with Q1. If I cannot, then I go to Q2. So I just found 10 and 12. I can select first and check their journal homepage, check their instructions, whether see they accept review or not. The first thing to read, of course, is their journal scope, see if your paper fits, and see if they accept reviews. And see how many word limit they are. Usually the word limit is around 5,000. So try to keep your review to around less than 5,000. More than that is your choice of journal is limited. But if you choose Q1, it's hard to go wrong. The impact factor will be high, more than 2 or 3 at least. Yeah, so impact factor, if you check SciMago, then they don't provide impact factor, but if you check Q1, you'll be high. So how do you know your paper fits the journal? I think the best way to learn is by example. So I go to PubMed again, I click the journal name and use TA. TA is journal. And I click review, publication type, and then the topic of my review, which is vaccine. So I look what kind of vaccine related papers this journal has published. There will be 6 results. I can read them. I do the same for epidemiology, which is another epidemiology journal, and there's only 2 results. And judging from the title alone, I can tell they are very mathematics heavy or theory heavy, so I know people won't fit. So we have to go for another field, maybe immunology or something. But that's the idea. The best way to know if your papers will be suitable for a journal is to look for reviews the journal has published in. You can do that through PubMed. Yeah, so once you identify your journal you want to submit to, you know how to contact the editor and pass the peer review process. I won't go so much into peer review because I think your supervisor will know more than me. But in case your supervisor wants you to contact the journal editor, I will show you how. So best to write a cover letter, even though it's optional, even though they say it's not necessary, it's best to write one. Desk rejection means rejected before giving out for peer review. So the editor, you have to try to get through the editor first. So you have to, in your cover letter, try to convince the editor about why is this manuscript important. How can this manuscript contribute to the journal? And just keep it short, within 1 page or maximum 2. And best to recommend qualified reviewers in your cover letter or in your submission page. In your submission page, they should have. Even though it's optional, they say 2 or 3, but give 4 or 5, make the editor's life easier, the editor will appreciate you. You can find potential reviews in your manuscript. Usually researchers, they put the corresponding author of the paper, they'll put their email in the paper. You can just take their email. You don't need to email the professor or the doctor for their permission. You can just put their name. I mean, I do that all the time. And the editor might or might not choose, you never know. And yeah, your editor is your boss. That is always right. Try to please your boss. And again, check the author instruction again before submitting. Sometimes they have instructions for cover letter that you don't want to miss. And here are some examples. My cover letter to reviews in medical biology is very simple. I just say what this review is about. It's about 6 different subtypes of long COVID or post-COVID syndrome. And why it's important, I said it has not been discussed in detail in the literature today. And how can this contribute to the journal scope? And it's very simple because they don't have instructions for cover letter, but in my previous one to ACS Chemical Neuroscience, so same thing as here, but they want a lay summary of the review. So give a lay summary right properly. So just to show that the editor, you are know the read instructions and you respect the journal instructions. So read the journal homepage first to see if they have instructions for cover letter. Again, I'll provide this in the OneDrive folder. Yeah, your cover letter should be very confident. Be confident in your cover letter, but make sure you deliver, not be like this. So in peer review, typically there's 2 to 3. There are 4 outcomes: rejected, major revision, minor revision, or accepted without revision. Rejected is very rare. I mean, it's very common if you submit the wrong journal. So I make sure you pick the journal properly. It's called dash rejection. Accepted without revision is very rare. Never happened to me, but if they accept your paper without revision, then it might not be a good journal unless your paper is actually very, 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 very good. So minor and major revision are very common. Yeah, so your peer reviewers are your customers. They don't get paid, so treat your customers properly, and they are always right, even though sometimes they are wrong. So the common revisions are, unclear or flawed arguments, missing citations, poor English, and a flaw in the structuring of oral content, which is the hardest to address. I won't show examples here, but for example, sometimes they want you to restructure your content in 2 sections, but if you restructure the 2 sections, it usually affects the whole paper. So it's very time consuming. Sometimes they want you to turn your literature review into a systematic review. It's not a lot of comment, just 1 or 2 lines, but it takes a lot of time to change it. So the 4th one is the hardest to address. If you get the first 3, you're considered lucky. Then use track changes or color words or both. I use both and try to keep it clean because track changes are very messy. Try to keep it clean to make your reviewers' life easier. Yeah, just to close, some final words for me. For me, try to write something more meaningful to you. If you find your work meaningful, you're more likely to keep writing. Unless you're just gonna quit halfway. I have 2 or 3 reviews pending that I don't know that I never got into it because it's not something I'm interested in. So try to write something you find very meaningful. After you finalize the draft, read everything 1 more time or 2 more times. You'll be surprised because sometimes when you write paragraph by paragraph, but when you read it as a whole, you'll be surprised at how many sentences doesn't really make sense as a whole, but it makes sense in the paragraph only. So when you finalize your draft, read everything 1 more time. Make it a masterpiece, be proud and confident in your work. Then be proud and confident in your work. You make your work more successful in a sense. So you know your work best, your own critic. You can ask yourself, is this sentence clear? Is there anything else am I missing? Or what other things I'm missing in this research field? Or what are the limitations of this review? You can always discuss limitations in your paper in your discussion section. Yeah, but don't be overly too self-critical. Try to be your own critic in a good way. And learn from each other. Now you guys are learning a bit from me, but I used to learn from my supervisors. So you should start from there and hopefully get a chance to practice yourself. Yeah, remember this. This is what your life will look like if you write papers. But it's worth it because you'll feel like this when it's done, but life is not so good, you'll go back to that the next time. I think that's all. Yeah, thank you for your attention. Any questions?